doing a lot more with you in the future. So I'd like to start off with our debate. Our format today is going to be a cumulative format. There will be four questions in total. There will be a 2-minute introduction, a 2-minute closing. Each question will be for 2 minutes, and each candidate will also have 4 opportunities, that is, total, to take 1 minute or more after each candidate has answered a question to offer a rebuttal, that is, or expand upon their previous questions. So I will give a signal when you're 15 seconds out like this to know that your 2 minutes is almost up. So thank you very much. So I'd like to start the debate now. This debate will last for approximately 45 to 50 minutes. I'd like to start with an opening statement by Dale Ogden with the Libertarian Party.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you for inviting us to this debate. My name is Dale Ogden. I'm a Libertarian candidate for governor. I think that we need a major overhaul in this state's government with an extreme focus on individual freedom and personal responsibility. The government is out of control. It taxes us higher than any other state. We have, in most categories, we're among the top 2 or 3 in the country in terms of our tax levels. The state government spends an unconscionable amount of money, has made promises of pension and lifetime benefits to its employees that are impossible to pay ever, no matter how much they want to tax us, because they exceed $500 billion in total liabilities. The state is effectively insolvent. We need to cut back on the spending by the government. We need to abolish tons and tons of useless and harmful regulatory agencies. A couple of professors from this university have estimated that regulation costs the state of California 3.8 million jobs. Yet we have 2.5 million people on unemployment. If we could abolish most of those regulations, not all of them, but most of them, we wouldn't have an unemployment problem in California. We'd have more tax revenue. We'd be able to cut taxes, and along with the spending cuts, we'd have a lot better economy. We'd probably have another $500 billion of economy in this state. And we'd have new businesses and millions of new jobs. And people would be begging for people to come work for them instead of laying people off. We need a business-friendly environment so that we can have people working and productive. And we need to cut back on the parasitic sector, the government employees, the dead weight, the bloat, and restore freedom to this state. In addition, we need to abolish, I support Prop 19. We need to let people put whatever substances in their bodies they want. We need to allow people to live their lives the way they want. We need to get government out of people's lives, let parents choose education for their children, not bureaucrats. We probably need to abolish government education, at least in some areas like Los Angeles Unified School District, where they're spending almost $30,000 a year per student. We could send them all to private elite schools. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dale. I'd like to, Shalene Nightingale, with your introduction, please.
Yes, absolutely. Hi, I'm Shalene Nightingale. I'm with the Constitution Party, which is the American Independent Party and Ballot Access here in the state of California. And I really want to thank Christina Tobin for this free and equal election process, and I, of course, endorse Christina in every effort, including her own campaign, who will be who I'm giving my vote to. And I also want to thank the students here today for helping put this on. We appreciate you. I'm so happy to see that there are students that are fighting for liberty. Don't give up. I was asked to run for this office a year and a half ago. I reluctantly said yes, but now I'm glad I'm in the process because I have learned an invaluable lesson, and that is we do not have a free and equal election process at all. I was disgusted when Laura, Dale, I, and Carlos were not invited in the other major debates. We were qualified by Deborah Bowen of the Secretary of State to be governors. We are in the ballot pamphlets. We should have been in those debates. I think it says quite a bit about other candidates when all of us were invited and the 2 major ones did not even bother to show up or even give us an answer. So that is where we are. People we are electing are not listening to us. Candidates that are trying to get elected are not listening to us. We have to stop this process, and I'm really disgusted that Prop 14 passed. But we the people, we can't stop. We have to keep fighting. I'm encouraged. There is a major third-party campaign in Colorado. It looks like that candidate, Tom Tancredo, is going to win. It doesn't matter if we agree on all the issues. I want to say I really, really adore Laura Wells and Dale Ogden. I've enjoyed my time with them. No, do we agree on issues? Absolutely not. But that doesn't matter. The fact is that we are responsible adults and we can sit around and we can discuss the issues. I feel that we need to get back to being one people. We cannot let them divide us anymore. We have to stay united. It's the United States of America, not divided. If we disagree on issues, let's go around the table and let's talk about it, but let's no longer let them divide us. So I want to thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to this process. And Christina, thank you once again, and I appreciate Free and Equal.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
That's very sweet. And Laura Wells, of all three of you, with the Green Party, please, your introduction.
Well, thank you, Christina, and thank you for being here, all of the independent party candidates. I don't know what third party means. I view us as independent.
Amen.
And we're independent of the status quo, and particularly the giant corporations. So that is why we are here together and we're running. I agree that, like what Shalene just said, that if we have different points of view and we have that around the table, whether it's Sacramento or whether it's Washington, D.C., then we can have the possible solutions. We can have the different perspectives about the problems at the table, and then we can move ahead. One of my favorite Green Party bumper stickers is democracy. Great idea. When do we start? The Green Party stands for, the four, it has 10 key values, but the four main ones are environmental wisdom, ecological wisdom, as a lot of people think of it because of the color green. But it's also social justice and peace and nonviolence and grassroots democracy, which is decentralization with an emphasis on the local. And what I'm seeing is a movement that's building, and one of the examples that I always give is Detroit. That's where I went to school, learned a lot outside of college there. But in June, 20,000 people got together for 4 to 5 days, working for what we want: housing, healthcare, environment, education, a good economy, jobs, justice. And it didn't get a blip on the mainstream media. Whereas the Tea Parties get 400 people get together for a couple of hours to see a celebrity, and that's the mainstream media. And so that's one of the things that we're also facing is a media subsidy. I've started to say that I don't care if Meg Whitman, if somebody gave me a choice, you can have the $140 million of her own money that Megabucks Whitman has spent, or you can have the free, no charge, absolutely free media time that she's gotten on the newsprint, on the TV, and the radio. I'd say keep your $140 million. I'll take the airtime, and we'll put out our values and let people know that they have other choices rather than the narrowing down to the Pepsi Coke, where there's no red wine, smoothies, little juice, something, a beer maybe, cool, clear water, something that's healthy and makes sense. And so that's why I'm glad that Christina, Free and Equal, pulled this together, and that we all came from our various places around the state to gather, because we are gathering strength. There's absolutely no reason to stop. Our next generation's worth it, California's worth it, so we'll just keep going. And thank you all for being a part of it.
Thank you very much. Great introduction. And before we start with the first question, I just wanted to extend us taking a step away from free and equal elections. As Christina Tobin would like to personally endorse all three of these candidates. Thank you very much for being here today. So I appreciate it very much. So we'll start with the first question of 4 with Dale Ogden. The question is, Proposition 19 to legalize, tax, and regulate cannabis is a hot-button issue facing California voters for election for many reasons. Do you support or oppose the legalization of marijuana, and why? How do you feel this issue relates to the U.S. military presence in Costa Rica, a non-military nation? What could you add to the discussion of our presence in non-military nations? Thank you.
I absolutely 100% support Proposition 19, the legalization of marijuana. I don't like the tax and regulate part of it too much, but I guess you got to start somewhere. The war on drugs is one of the most horrible things that our country has ever done to its people. And we already had an example of it with alcohol prohibition, and yet they didn't learn. The old biddies in Washington decided, we're going to make all this stuff illegal. Marijuana was legal for most of the history of our nation until the 20th century. All of these other drugs, these things were legal to be used by adults until the 20th century, when they started deciding what you're allowed to do. They just want to dig into your life and control you. What's happened is we've created an environment for organized crime to thrive. So many people were worried about immigration, and yet a big part of our immigration problem is drugs. We have criminal gangs that can make billions of dollars, and when there's a demand for a product, people are going to supply it. And because it's illegal, it attracts a criminal element, and it's going to cause violence. People are going to be fighting over their turf. The cartel, there have been 28,000 people murdered in drug wars in Mexico. And yet, what's the solution to the idiots in Washington and Sacramento? Nothing. Let's try harder. Let's fight harder so we can maybe see more people killed. There's people killed, these young men and women killed, mostly young men, in our inner cities every day in drug wars over turf. And it makes a blip on the news. They talk about murder rates, but murder rates are mostly drug related. We need to end the war on drugs, let people be free and make their own decisions. If someone has a drug problem, it's a medical issue, not a criminal issue. And for that reason, I fully support Prop 19, and I support going much beyond Prop 19 and legalizing all substances. Thank you.
Thank you. Shalene?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first I want to answer about the Costa Rica part. I have no business answering about Costa Rica. I'm a United States citizen. I agree with the founding fathers. We are not to entangle in foreign alliances, period, bottom line. Regarding Prop 19, it's a states' rights issue. It's an individual rights issue. You should be able to choose to do what you want when you go to the voting booth. I do want us to be careful, though, of unintended consequences. So I'm saying look at the Prop 19 very carefully. I don't like the way that it was written. I think that it is flawed in its writing. I, as a constitutionalist, believe, my interpretation, we are our own property. And my own property, the government doesn't have any right to regulate me. If we have them, when you use a substance, that is your property. It's part of you. If we legalize it, then the government is going to regulate it. You have to understand that. They're going to tax it, they're going to regulate it. I've spoken to farmers in Humboldt County that don't like Proposition 19. It's going to put them out of business. If you look at the way the medical marijuana is right now, I believe it's 30 square feet each person that lives in your house can have. So you can have up to 10 people living in your house, and you can have 30 square feet of your own product. If this Prop 19 passes because of the way it was written, I think it limits it to only 4 people in the house and less square footage. You're going to have less product. So what do you think is going to happen? Well, the government and the big pharmaceutical companies are going to come in and tell you, well, you're going to buy our product from here on out. You have to be very careful with how they're going to regulate it and how they're going to tax it. Again, though, because I am a states' rights activist, I actually am, I think the only, I don't know if you did, I'm a governor candidate here in California that signed the 10th Amendment Center Pledge. So whatever the people decide is what I will fight for. If you decide yes on it, I will make sure that no judicial activist overturns it. It's supposed to be the will of the people, not the will of some judicial activists.
Thank you. Laura?
Yes on Prop 19. That's the Green Party position, and that's my position. And the reason for that has to do, there are a number of reasons. One are the prisons being filled up with drug offenses, when really there is such a thing as drug abuse, and that should have rehabilitation, should be the solution for that, not prisons. And our criminal justice system spends so much of their efforts on marijuana usage and things like that, that we need to be, that doesn't help us be more secure. So that's, so that would help save money in that way and to help people save their lives rather than being in jail. Any science that you would look at, if you compared alcohol and marijuana, I think that alcohol would come out a little more dangerous. And the other thing is industrial hemp. It's absolutely insane that industrial hemp is not legalized. And so this leads the way toward that insanity ending, to where we can have industrial hemp. And that would take some of the pressure off the destruction of our forests, because there's so many things that you can do with hemp. From paper to shoes to food supply, that kind of thing. And, you know, as they say, it grows like a weed. So it's something that does environmentally makes a lot of sense. And as far as Costa Rica and other foreign countries, our foreign policy with other countries, especially in this hemisphere, related to all drugs, has got to change. It's a way of actually the people in those countries, whether it's Costa Rica or Bolivia or whatever, they know that the presence of American military there has less to do with stopping drug abuse, because everybody knows drug abuse, you have to deal with the user. That's what, you know, the person who's using it, not the supply. That's what really works. And so we need to butt out of the DEA, and everybody else needs to butt out of the other countries' internal affairs.
Okay, may I remind that each candidate has up to 4 opportunities to offer a rebuttal or expand upon their previous questions. Dale?
Thank you. I agree with everything that my 2 opponents just said. One of the problems with drug prohibition is corruption of the police. I mean, not just how much resources they use. Part of my platform, part of what I've had on my website, is that I plan to appoint a volunteer commission to pardon every single individual in our prisons convicted of a nonviolent drug offense or other victimless crimes as well. There's absolutely no reason why any of those people should be in prison. I've talked to some people who served time in some of the minimum and medium security prisons, and there are people serving 15-year sentences for marijuana possession. I don't care if they had a ton of it. That's a lot of time in prison for something that should be legal. And I would pardon those people. And, you know, I think that, you know, I agree with, as I said, everything my opponents have said here. You know, our founding fathers said, entangling alliances with no one, friendship and commerce with everyone. And absolutely.
Thank you.
Amen. Well, I'm not going to be the politician who said I didn't inhale. Yes, I did inhale. I did quite a few things when I was younger. That doesn't mean I advocate drugs. I don't use them now. But I agree with Dale on this as well. I don't believe that people who are arrested for minor drug offenses should be arrested. I think they need to be rehabilitated. Our prison system is a complete mess, and we are putting people in. It's overcrowded, and we're putting people in there that don't belong there. We're putting people in there that need rehabilitation. They need some help. So again, it's a states' rights issue. So do your homework, and you decide. And as governor, I will protect your decision.
Just a quickie, yes on Prop 19. And a lot of what happens with the propositions as well as the other laws is it depends on who's in power and how it gets implemented and executed. And if we have in power people from political parties that are heavily invested by corporations, then we've got a problem. So we need to get to where we have government with people in it that are powered by people and not the corporations.
Thank you to all 3 of you. Moving on to question number 2, starting with Shalene. California's new top 2 primary system, which passed in June of this year, essentially sets up a system of 2 general elections per season, benefiting the most heavily funded candidates. What is your feeling on a system of proportional representation for Americans, and do parties outside the Democratic and Republican Party and independent candidates have a responsibility to assist each other in being visible to the voting public? Shalene.
First of all, I want to say, if you would have looked at the results of Prop 14, when it came in through the mail-in votes, we were losing majorly. that if you notice on the day of the poll, we started winning. The gap was very small. The reason for that is the opposition to our side put out a lot of money. Big, huge amounts of money. That's what's unfair about our system. The four of us candidates and the other four major parties, we don't have the money that the two Wall Street parties have. We are not funded by big corporate unions. We are not funded by big corporations. We are funded by the people. And I think that's what we need to get back to. I personally advocate for a cap on the amount of money that we can receive as candidates. And I also believe that entities like corporations and unions should not be able to donate to candidates. If it was just individual donations like our campaign has received from the people, that's what we need to do. We need to put the process back in the hands of the people, not special interest. So I definitely, I'm disappointed that the two major parties feel like they need to capitalize on the market. And I believe that Prop 14, although I said, look, I don't believe in judicial activism. When the people speak, the people speak. But in this particular case, the people were deceived. And we need to do something to fight for free and equal. Our founding fathers didn't mean for us to have a one-party system monopoly or even a two-party system monopoly. As a matter of fact, Thomas Jefferson stated that if he had to go to heaven as a party, he wouldn't go to heaven. The point is, we should not be about party politics. We should be about the people. Free and equal for all.
Thank you. Laura?
And I think Prop 14, given that it was in a primary election that there weren't a lot of people that went there, they got something like 14% of the potential voters actually brought that in. And so there's a question about, did the people speak? And especially when people started to know when it was 20 to 1 or 25 to 1, the funding to try to push Prop 14 over, and people started to understand that it wasn't the open primary kind of thing that they said. Also, I want to lay a little bit of the credit or blame for it passing on Jerry Brown's shoulders. He was the Attorney General, and then he's now running for governor. And he's the one that actually phrased that, entitled it, elections, increases right to participate in primary elections. What's not to like about that? And that ensures that the two candidates receiving the most votes will be in the general election. Doesn't say flattens it, narrows down your choices to essentially two, and particularly incumbent and corporations. So yeah, the status quo is not interested in having the elections change in order to empower people. But if they were, or when they are, because there'll be somebody in power that's powered by people, then proportional representation would be a wonderful change to go to. Over 70 countries in the world, 70, in the world, have leapfrogged over our Democracy 101, and they have brought in proportional representation, which means that in a legislature you would end up really wanting to vote for exactly who you wanted, and you'd be motivated to go to the polls, because if in a 5-person district, if your person got 20%, they would be at the table and they would bring in the kind of issues that you wanted. And so yes, I'm totally in favor of proportional representation.
Thank you. Dale?
Again, I agree with my opponents. I agree we should have proportional representation. I think Prop 14 was just one more scam perpetrated on the people by those in power. There's a lot of problems with the initiative process because too often initiatives are run on elections when 14% of the voters show up. The same is true with bond issues. The 2/3 requirement for bond issues was relaxed to 55% based on the allegation that majority rules, and yet many of these bond issues are on ballots where there's only 10% of the voters. I mean, Prop 14, that method of voting already exists in Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles. That's how we elect our city council. We have a primary election in March, and maybe, if you're lucky, 10% of the voters show up. And if someone gets 50% in that primary, they win, and it's over. So you could, you could get 5% of the people to vote for you, 6% of the people. You could become a city council person making $200,000 a year with all kinds of benefits. But if no one gets the most votes, then the top two, just like Prop 14, have a runoff in June. And what you end up with, as I always say, why vote in June? I get a choice between a pro-union leftist Democrat and a pro-union leftist Democrat. It really does not make any difference who you vote for in the general election. And that's what's going to happen with Prop 14. The districts are going to, districts that lean one way or another, you're going to end up with no choice, and people are going to be less and less interested in voting. I think it's a bad idea. It should be overturned. I think we should have reform in the initiative process. Perhaps we should only have initiatives on ballots in even-numbered years during November, when you're either voting for governor or president, where we have the highest turnout. I think that would be a good constitutional amendment.
Those in power know exactly what they're doing. It was an evil dictator who once said, it's not who votes, it's who counts the votes. They knew exactly what they were doing with this proposition. That's why they wrote it the way that they did. If you notice, they used our buzzwords, freedom and liberty and choice. They were lying to us, of course. What are we going to do about it now, though? We've got to, this is what we have to do. We have to work together. We, the people, agree, I would say, on 90% of the issues. Maybe our solutions are a little bit different. But I'm going to go back to this. I would like to see us once again work together on this initiative process and work together on overturning Prop 14. We have to fight for our freedom, because if we don't, it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse. And the college students that helped us today put this on, it's their generation, my son's 7. It's their generation that will reap exactly what we sow today. So are we going to fight for them? Or are we going to allow them, the powers to be, to continue to force us into a corner, to the point to where we have no choice?
May I remind the candidates, Dale, you have 3 responses, 1 minute response left, Shalene 2, and Laura 3. Moving on to our third question. Laura, immigration is a huge issue in California. Do you feel there are solutions we haven't tried that perhaps the top 2 parties are unable to consider? Could you share 1 or 2 of these ideas?
Well, the main thing that I believe that the immigration issue is being used for in this time in our state and country is as a scapegoat. And that immigrants are being blamed for everything from the state of our schools to the state of the economy to whether or not there are jobs and things like that. Just when people were getting a real clear view, and there was agreement across the political spectrum about what happened with the Wall Street bailout and how they are the ones that ruined this economy and then got bailed out, paid themselves retention bonuses. What? They did such a good job destroying the economy for the rest of us. And then if they had any money left over, they started buying out the local banks. The local banks were the strong ones. They were making the good loans. They were the ones that believe in strong communities, and that the smaller, and just like every other smaller business versus a mega corporation, they're the ones that create jobs. And so immigration, yes, there are things that need to be fixed about immigration, but let's look at some of the root causes of immigration. There are people that would stay in their own countries if they weren't refugees from military actions that were happening there. We've got to stop being in the position of having, I can't remember whether it's 700 or 900 military bases and all of these military actions that the U.S. has. And the economic disequality, the disparity of the economies between the countries. In Mexico, NAFTA is actually what cured me of the Titanic parties. The North American Free Trade Agreement helped to destroy the economy in Mexico. We need to look at that. Plus, improve the procedures here. and remove some of the obstacles for people who legitimately are trying to become citizens.
Okay, Gail?
Again, I agree with everything she just said. Immigrants are being used as a scapegoat for unemployment and the poor economy and bad schools, and yet immigrants didn't cause any of those things. Those things were caused by bad government, or by government being involved where it shouldn't be involved. You know, our economic meltdown was caused by Wall Street, wizards who went to Harvard and Yale and got their MBAs at Wharton and told everybody how brilliant they were and made millions of dollars getting bonuses for money that was never made. So our idiots in charge, Bush and Obama, and every moron they surrounded themselves with said, well, we have to bail out these banks. And, yet the real problem, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, were bigger bailouts than any private institution, and nothing's been done to fix them. They're still there and they're making more loans today than they ever were. And it's not a state issue, it's a federal issue, but that's where our economy's gone. And immigrants certainly didn't cause any of that. As I said earlier, I think part of our immigration problem is the war on drugs. Another part of our immigration problem is idiotic foreign policy. We for the last 40 or 50 years, we've been sticking our nose in everybody else's business. If any other country came over here and did that, we'd be nuking them. And yet we continue to do that. Why do we have a Department of Homeland Security? Because the Defense Department is a miserable failure. It is not a Defense Department, it's an offense department. And so we had to create a new one called Homeland Security to be the real Defense Department. And everybody knows what a Keystone Cop organization that is. Having just flown here today, but
Are you talking about Homeland Security? Look, this is where we're a little bit different. I'm a constitutionalist. There is immigration, which is how my mom's family came here. My mom's family are immigrants. Immigrants are those who apply and go through the process. Then you have, according to the Constitution, illegal aliens. Legal aliens are those that trespass. I have friends that, in fact, one of my friends, Lupe, the father was a coyote. All right? What's happening with the illegal aliens are being abused. They come to our country, they're being used by corporations and other people who hire them as slaves. Okay? This is the new slavery. We're not protecting them by allowing them to just come here freely. We're putting them into a slave class. Coyotes abuse them. The drug cartel comes over. We talk about the drug war. Well, I encourage everybody to watch the Drug Wars, Silver or Lead. You'll find out just how much our government and cartels are involved, and how we do go to other countries we don't belong into. So it's a lot bigger process and a lot bigger problem. So I do advocate putting our California State Military on the border. We have our own, under the governor's guidance, to stop the cartels and the coyotes. As far as those who want to come here to work, I advocate an agricultural work program. I believe that that's the fair and equitable thing. But I also am not for a welfare nanny state. I do believe that there's people who need help, disabled, homeless, senior citizens. As a matter of fact, I had a disabled couple call me the other night, and they said, Shalene, our benefits are being reduced. We can't work. I broke my neck. I'm paralyzed. I can't work. And we don't have any money in the system for them. However, we are spending on illegal aliens over $22 billion per year on those same public benefits that could go to disabled that need it. I spoke to a man who runs a disabled center. He just received a letter from Arnold Schwarzenegger taking away his benefits.
Okay. Response? Laura? Gail, please?
okay. I agree with a lot of what she said. I think that we do need to control our borders now, because we have all these underlying problems. I agree we should not be giving welfare benefits to pretty much anybody, because the fact that somebody, one person needs something doesn't make it immoral to steal it from someone else and call it taxes and give it to somebody else. So I don't think that, welfare is basically theft. It's forced theft. Charity is a virtue. And this country is the most charitable country on earth. And if we stop forcing people through theft with taxes to provide welfare for a lot of people who don't deserve it, able-bodied people who don't deserve it, then we would have even more charity. The whole idea that free trade benefits everybody. It doesn't just benefit individuals. NAFTA is not a free trade agreement. Okay, I mean it's a managed trade agreement. Free trade in labor and goods will ultimately help everyone.
Well, I basically agree with both of them. Oh, sorry.
Sure, you jumped in first. So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
yeah, so
Is it my turn?
order, if you want to rebuttal, please go ahead.
Was it my turn? Oh, okay. Okay, so I agree with both of them. Excuse me. I oppose NAFTA. I oppose the North American Union. I oppose things that I don't feel that are for the people. And we do accept more illegal immigrants than any other nation in the world per year. But what we have to do is the corporations, the elected officials that we elect into office, we have to make sure that they're not corrupt and that they're representing us. So I just feel that we have to do something. I was just reading the other day that Mexico is now building a border fence on their southern border. So they want their country protected. People want to be sovereign. They want to feel protected. So I do believe we're going to have to do something to stop the drug cartels and to stop the coyotes. If you knew my friend Lupe's story, you'd be crying. So let's protect the people and let's make sure that those who need it, the disabled, our veterans, senior citizens, and those in need do have the help.
Thanks, and Laura.
Okay, the money that we're spending on walls and the border wall and things like that are, to me, it's a waste of resources and it's a waste of money and it's a weapon of mass distraction to put things on to shift the focus toward immigration as opposed to the extreme concentration of wealth and power that's been happening in this country. When we really get that that's what's happening, I think things will start to change. People are still in the mode of thinking that if somebody makes $1 billion that they've deserved it. It turns out that a lot of companies, their main profit center, their main profit strategy is to see how much money they can get from the government actually, and how much they can get in subsidies and things like that. And the thrust of our policies being toward the concentration of wealth and power at the top 1%, 5%, we're not talking about the local rich, but the super, super rich, and blaming going down, going to the people that have the least, the immigrants, or even our youth, or people of low income. I can tell you a story about my sister who was on welfare for a short time, finished school, went to law school, started being a taxpayer, and never took any other money. But that kind of thing is what works, and we are very far from that kind of leg up.
All right, we're moving on to our fourth and final questions. Due to our time restraints, starting this debate a bit late due to technical difficulties, I'd like this question to be response for 1 minute, please. And so the question is, starting with Dale. The current political climate is possibly as ugly as it has ever been on both state and national levels. How do you feel we can steer political discourse back to civility? The top two candidates have bombarded California voters with attack ads and junk mail. What would you say to voters who are fed up with this style of campaigning? 1 minute, please.
3 words, vote for me. Or vote for Shalene. I tell a lot of people to vote for her. Some people think I'm a little too extreme. But, politics has always been ugly. You read about our founding fathers. There was a lot of ugliness that went on then. The point now is it's all fake. I've run for office several times in California now. And I ran for insurance commissioner 3 times. I've been involved in a number of debates where they did invite all the candidates, particularly being someone with the more knowledge about insurance regulation than every other person I've run against combined ever will. But the fact is that it was all a game. That's all it was. You know, when I sat there with Chuck Quackenbush or John Garamendi, it was a game to them. You know, nothing was real. That's all it was. You know, the animosity was fake. They were all buddies, you know, like two lawyers arguing in a courtroom. You know, you'd think they would walk out of there and slit each other's throats, but they love each other. Because they know deep down inside, you know, win or lose, you know, you win, I'm going to get the job at the Department of the Interior. Or I'm going to get appointed to this board that pays $200,000 a year. So they're all in it together.
Thank you. Shalene?
Well, quickly I want to say this. One of the #1 complaints I've received from voters is the attack ads. People don't want to hear attacks, they want to hear issues. They want to hear how the candidate is going to represent us if elected into office. What I will say, and I'm really proud of the people, we are sending a very clear message this election. The person who spent the most money, over $150 million, is not going to win. I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm looking at the polls, I'm hearing the people talk out there, is not going to win. And that's what we needed to do. We need to let them know we are not going to take your big money, false promises, lies, and attack ads anymore. We want issues and we want representation. So congratulations, I'm proud of all of you. It doesn't matter which one of us you vote for your principles. Vote for your values. As far as federal government, I'm a states' rights advocate. I want the federal government out of our state.
And finally, Laura.
One of the problems is that people are set up to vote against somebody. They're voting for anybody but. You know, it starts out right away, narrowed down. It seems like sort of what I've heard described as the cattle slaughterhouses in Chicago. I mean, that image just came to my mind, sorry. But it just like everybody's just narrowed down, and you've got one way to go straight into the iceberg, which is why I'm starting to call them the Titanic parties. But they don't bring up things like the state bank. You know, like we could have a state bank and start taking, and imagine, make good loans and give good credit to small businesses, to students, to the homeowners, you know, rather than be in the grip of Wall Street and the Federal Reserve. And things like talking the truth about what happened with Prop 13 and what happened to the tax structure and why are we paying more and more taxes the less and less money that we have, and getting fewer and fewer services like libraries and schools with 33 kids in a classroom, if not 40, and all of that. So they've got it rigged, and we're up there scurrying around how to de-rig this thing, and it will happen.
Great. Well, that's the end of our debate. Before we move on to closing statements, thank you very much for great answers. And so, again, due to the time restraints that we have with the delay of the debate, I'd like to have a closing statement rather than 2 minutes, 1 minute each, maybe a little bit over. So we'll start with Shalene then.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Christina, once again. I do want to make this very, I know I'm running for state office, however, end the Fed. It really has to get out there. I want to thank everybody who came here today to listen to us. Really, though, this should have been packed. This should have been a packed room. I really feel that we have to get people more interested in the political process. The reason why they've been able to take such power and do the things they do against we the people is because we the people aren't paying attention. So those of you in college, get out there and encourage your fellow students, your friends to get involved in the process because it's your future we're fighting for.
Thank you very much. Don't be shy to clap. Great. Laura, please.
Okay, like I said earlier, I mentioned the U.S. Social Forum that happened in Detroit where 20,000 people got together for 4.5 days working on all the things that we want. And I think that it's time for us to ask the question, what kind of California do we want? And go for that. And one of the things that I've heard is that this generation that includes the students that are in this room are very much more involved than the students that were graduating 10 or 20 years ago. And I think that that is extremely hopeful, because with some of us who we might call elders and the students working together, I think that we can really, with mutual respect, get someplace. And I have been at meetings where that has happened, and where both the students and the elders were respectful with each other, working together. You know, we're going to have to be in the streets. There's just no way. You can't make major change without in the streets. But if I had a little more time, I'd talk about what's happening in Latin America, which is 180 degrees different from what they're talking about in the newspapers, but change has happened, better schools, better health care, more participation in the government. It's happened there, it can happen here. So thank you all for being part of it.
Gail, please.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. I think the way I can sum up my campaign and my governing philosophy is that you have to ask yourself, every time there's an issue, ask yourself who should decide. If you think government should do something, you have to ask who in government is going to decide. Where are you going to find the angel to be the bureaucrat that makes that decision? Where are you going to find the all-wise person to make a decision about your life or my life or anyone else's life? So that's why I advocate individual responsibility, individual freedom, and minimum government and minimum taxes. Or as the Reason Foundation says, free minds and free markets. And that's what I stand for, and that's how I govern. And I love these ladies up here. I don't think we've disagreed on hardly anything today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to wrap up this debate. I've done 7, 8 debates. This is my first time having a lady at all on the panel, so it's very historical for me. It's very nice to have you. And also, again, my heartfelt thanks goes out to the chapter of California State University Students for Liberty. Thank you very much for putting this all together. We are going to be back again, bigger and better. Finally, free and equal elections. What we do at the feed of freeandequal.org, you can find that we will be doing and hosting through university chapters nationwide, Students for Liberty, and many others. We'll be hosting and organizing all-inclusive debates nationwide. So if you would like to support us in what we do, please go to freeandequal.org today. And thank you so much again for being here today.